Are we truly alone? Or do we share this very planet with other sentient beings? Watching. Waiting. Are angels and demons standing right beside us at this moment in an alternate dimension we can't quite touch? Was there a great reset? And if so, was it orchestrated by ancient secret societies? And why? Why did so many of our oldest buildings end up buried beneath the earth? Grab a drink, pull up a seat, and come sit with me by the fire as we uncover the strange, the hidden, and the forbidden on Fireside Conspiracies. Hey everyone, I'm Nick and I want to welcome you into Fireside Conspiracies. This is a new podcast that'll be focusing on conspiracy theories, and not only is it the first episode, this is my first time doing a project like this, so hopefully I'll get better as we go on this adventure. Now let me start by saying I am not a historian or philosopher. I don't speak with any authority beyond my own life experience. So my goal isn't to pontificate ideology or tell people how to live and what to think. In fact, that would be the last thing I want to do. I listen to podcasters to get new views and perspectives on life, to find theories and ideas that I want to explore and sometimes even rabbit hole. So I'm putting this out in the same theme, things I find interesting and seemingly many others do as well. Now, I'm no expert, so I expect to learn a lot on this journey, and hopefully if it's something you're into, we can do it together. So to start this episode, I'll pose a question. And that question is, are ancient secret societies actually real? Are there cabals moving internationally through the shadows, manipulating governments and religions like pieces on a chessboard, influencing countries, churches, and businesses, nudging along agendas through education, science, military, and even charitable organizations? We've heard the catch-all phrase Illuminati so much that the name no longer really holds any meaning. It's just become the boogeyman and gotten lumped in with mud floods and the Loch Ness Monster. And for the record, I'm a no on the monster and well, that's a little more complicated on the mud floods. But that'll be for another episode. Still, this idea didn't come from fairy tales and fantasy writers. So, when and where did it actually start? I suppose we could take that all the way back to worship of Isis and Ishtar, or Sumeria and the Anunnaki. But I want to look more at the iteration that's evolved into what we have in modern times. Now, many of you know this already, but for those who are thinking, what is a secret society? This is how I would explain it. It's an organization that prioritizes keeping a high level of security around almost every aspect of what they do, including membership, rituals, initiation ceremonies, internal rules, symbols, and most importantly, its true objectives and activities. It's not about privacy, it's about active concealment. You want in? They're exclusively invite only. And who knows what form of rituals are required just to get a foot in the door. They're often formed by small groups of people who either have a shared objective or have attained some form of advanced knowledge through discovery or invention. And through that, they're able to create something different from the norm, usually followed by desires to cause a social paradigm shift towards their interests. Obviously, the go-to here is the Masons. Even today, much of what they do is shrouded in mystery. But if we think of their roots in building and understanding of keystones as just one example, that knowledge unlocked the ancient archways that were so revered, and they weren't sharing that with anyone. So if we consider the Masons of today, it feels more like a networking club. Now, I was in a cigar society for a while. Absolutely loved it. The people were great, they were from all walks of life, and we'd sit down with cigars and bourbon, playing cards and sharing stories, debating philosophy and networking. But the Masons started as a true secret society. Now, some of you will know more about this than I do, but here's my understanding. The power they wielded came from their advanced knowledge of geometry and mathematics. It wasn't just the archways, castles, cathedrals, or even the Great Pyramids. And I use the plural there to shout out all the pyramids around the world hiding under dirt and trees that no one seems to want to talk about, but that's also for another episode. Still, beyond those wonders, they could build things like aqueducts to move water around anywhere it was needed. Now that might sound simple in the 21st century, but to crack that technology would virtually make you a god to everyone else in your time. They understood things like pi, the golden ratio, and sacred geometry. Now, when I say sacred geometry, most people don't know what I'm talking about. Let's see. When we look at ancient mosaics, rugs, tile patterns in temples, those patterns didn't come from an artist's creativity. At least not most of them. You know, there are some things we create and others we discover. For example, we discovered music. We create songs. So those patterns were discovered. They are naturally occurring, but through sound waves and frequencies. Okay, so what am I saying? That if you sing the right notes into the fog, it will create a geometric pattern? No. At least, I don't think so. Although, it does make me think about the power of vibrations and the ideas of creation coming from sound waves like Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia books, which, of course, is an idea Lewis got from his study of ancient cultures, but I'm getting away from the point. Look this up on YouTube. It's called cymatics. C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S. If you place a metal plate on a speaker, cover it in sand, then slowly increase the frequency from that speaker, that sand is going to move itself into the exact same patterns that we've seen displayed by humans for thousands of years. It sounds crazy till you see it. How they learn these things? I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say it was knowledge that came from people who made it through the Great Flood, or Younger Dryas event if you like, from an antediluvian society like in Atlantis. Based on how massively destructive the event was, it's likely very little would survive, both knowledge and life. But what did would instantly become the most advanced knowledge on Earth. And if a civilized people are rebuilding society, they're going to protect records of the most important knowledge. Mathematics would be one of those. So, if this sacred knowledge survived the Great Deluge, where does it pop up next in history? Let's fast forward to northern Syria in the 11th century where our story really begins. It's the Crusades, and the area is controlled by Shiite Muslim warriors. Now, let me take just a second to say, none of this is an indictment on your Muslim or Christian neighbor. I don't care what you believe, as long as individually you're peaceful and respectful. None of us is accountable for someone else's interpretation of ancient texts and philosophies, just like our actions aren't pardoned by them either. And let's not forget, Isaac and Ishmael buried the hatchet at Abraham's funeral. I'd prefer to just follow their lead on this. I'll put it another way. This quote is from SG-1, the Stargate TV series. Paraphrasing, "The universe is so big, and we are so very small. There is truly only one thing that we can control, whether we are good or evil." So this has nothing to do with anyone individually, it's just a look at history. So this group of warriors was led by a man named Hassani Sabah. He was known as the Old Man of the Mountain, and he had a very effective way of creating followers. He used torture and violent killings to intimidate. Then he promised people great pleasures in the afterlife for undying loyalty. He would actually get recruits high on hashish, take them to tents filled with beautiful naked women, and tell them this is what awaited them in the afterlife if they showed strict obedience. And let's be honest, that's a pretty strong pitch by itself. Then he would get his soldiers high again before sending them out on missions feeling euphoric and ready to die for their beliefs. They became experts at killing and took on the name Hashashin, which of course is where we get the modern day assassin. It's estimated that by 1100 AD, Sabah had amassed over 70,000 followers. Now, around this time, travel to the Holy Land became very popular. The First Crusade had ended, and both wealthy and commoners wanted to pilgrim to Jerusalem. But the trip was 2,000 miles for most and took anywhere from 3 to 6 months at that time. The highways were full of thieves and the forests full of wild animals, so you can imagine those with money wanted protection for the trip. Coinciding with this is the great scholar St. Bernard's studying of ancient texts and scrolls. Okay, now stay with me. I'm going to introduce a couple of people, but remember, we're building something here. Now, Bernard was a linguist and a translator. While very devoted, he wasn't orthodox for his time. He seemed to be more focused on the feminine, like the Black Madonna cults, and more mystic philosophies. But he was very well studied. Legend tells us that in his research, he found something. Something secret. Something important. And he believed it to be buried under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The next thing we know, Sir Hughes de Paynes, an associate of St. Bernard, and his 8 knights leave to start offering protection to travelers. Now, to the naked eye, this makes sense. They aren't fighting anymore, so they're going to go earn extra money escorting and protecting people. But once they arrive in Jerusalem, we don't really see that they did much protecting or traveling. What we do see is signs of excavation under the Temple Mount for the next 9 years. Now, to be fair, the knights were busy some with fighting. They had aligned with King Baldwin II of Jerusalem and had many enemies. Ironically, many shared enemies with the Hashashin. As much as historians don't like it, stories persist that the Hashashin and Templars met, shared intelligence, even paid each other tribute. Kind of an enemy of my enemy situation. Some even whispered that the Templars picked up assassination techniques and possibly much darker practices, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. So the knights arrive, and King Baldwin credits them with aiding him. He gives them their headquarters on the Temple Mount and later helps them get official recognition from the Pope. Now, 9 years of archaeology doesn't come cheap, and at this point the knights didn't have the support they would down the road, so how did they fund it? They had a secret financier. Count Hugh of Champagne, a French nobleman, was bankrolling them. He also just happened to be friends with St. Bernard and Sir de Paynes. And you can see now we have the 3 things we need. The scholar to unlock the ancient knowledge in Bernard, the money man to fund the expedition in Hugh, and muscle to carry out the mission in the Knights. This was no coincidence. It was well planned and executed in complete secrecy. And based on what happened next, it feels like we can be pretty sure they were successful. At the end of the 9th year of digging, a message is sent to Count Hugh, who, without hesitation, sails to Jerusalem. Whatever it was they showed him hits like a lightning bolt. He immediately signs over his lands and wealth and joins the order just as a simple knight. Something grabbed hold of and inspired this rich, powerful man, and it changed him forever. Speculation on what they found runs wide. The Ark of the Covenant? The Holy Grail, whatever that is. The original cross or fragments. The Spear of Destiny, being the spear used to pierce Jesus' side. Or even the Crown of Thorns. It's unlikely it was something of material value, such as treasure, because the Count was wealthy already and wouldn't have been moved by jewels or gold. Mainstream historians consider this myth, but it seems like the pieces are right there. Still, figuring out what they found? Look, if it made it to the Vatican, which it likely did, we'll probably never know what it is. The Vatican and the Smithsonian are basically Gringotts and Hogwarts. Ain't no safer place to hide something. For decades. And centuries. So after 9 years in Jerusalem, Count Hugh shows up, gives away everything to join the Knights, And then Sir Hughes de Paynes, now the first Grand Master of the Templars, suddenly sails back to Europe. With an elated St. Bernard's full backing, he meets Pope Honorius II at the Council of Troyes. Almost overnight, the Pope declares the Templars answerable only to him. That means kings and bishops have no say over the Knights. In fact, there are stories of the Templars renouncing excommunications from bishops. That kind of thing was unprecedented. You have to wonder what Hughes showed him. Now, everyone wants the Red Cross on their chest. Young men are flocking left and right to take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Nobles across Europe start emptying their treasures into Templar coffers just for a chance to have their sons accepted. Knights abandon titles and marriages to join these holy warriors. You really have to wonder what impressed the Pope so much that he'd hand that kind of power to this new order. Now, the Templars individually swear personal poverty, but the order grows immensely in wealth and gains lands all the way from Scotland down to Sicily. They basically invented modern checking. We take it for granted today, but they coined the idea. They let pilgrims deposit gold in Paris, then withdraw it in Jerusalem with a coded letter that would be useless to any bandits who tried to steal it. Pretty soon, kings, popes, merchants, they all owed the Templars money. At their peak, they were the biggest bankers in all of Christendom. They literally held the debt of half the crowned heads of Europe. Absolutely incredible. Makes you think about who holds the debt of our current world powers, but again, that's a different episode. So generations pass. Lands and wealth increase. And for nearly 200 years, the Knights Templar are the authority of the realm. Then, in 1307, a French king, Philip IV, enters the picture. He's deadly handsome, unapologetically ruthless, and absolutely drowning in debt. Mostly like everyone else to the Templars. He can't possibly pay it back. And while he can't directly attack the Knights yet, he is a king. And he's not going to kowtow to some banker monks, even if they do bang like the Wu-Tang Clan. But he's clever, so he starts cooking up a plan. Philip orders secret arrests across France in the middle of the night. He levies charges like blasphemy and sacrilege, spitting on and more obscene things on the cross, sexual perversions, worshipping bearded, severed heads in the name of Baphomet, and dark, ancient rituals in hidden rooms. Now you might say, Nick, that's just 14th century fake news. And I'd agree to an extent. But there is probably some truth in some of that. We can pretty easily speculate that they picked up occult influence from St. Bernard and their roots in the East. How extensive that really was, I don't know, but obviously Philip was going to throw everything he could at them anyway. And with enough torture, the confessions started pouring out. Now, I'm a kid of the 80s. I have a t-shirt that says Camp Crystal Lake, established 1980 on the front. The back says Counselor. We all grew up with Friday the 13th in our lives somehow, even if just in people acting different when it pops up on the calendar. And as I'm sure most of this audience knows, that didn't come from Victor Miller or Sean Cunningham. On October 13th, 1307, thousands of Templars were arrested at dawn. The king took possession of all their French holdings. Pope Clement V, feeling pressure from Philip and seeing no other option, decides he has no choice but to dissolve the order. 7 years later, Grand Master Desmoulins, the last man to officially hold that title, and the leaders under him would be tied to stakes in public. Wood would be placed around the base. It would be covered in oil and set ablaze. The people would cheer the end of the heretics, but a lone voice would rise above all others from the flames, the curse of the Grand Master upon the king and the Pope. And within a year, both were dead. So that's it. 9 years forming the foundation, 189 years of unprecedented wealth and power, and 7 years of relentless persecution leading to their destruction. But here's the rub. We know that dozens of ships from the renowned Templar fleet sailed from La Rochelle just before the arrests. A fleet captained by the greatest sailors of the age, with contacts and friendships all over the known world. And while Philip was able to reclaim land, the gold, the relics, whatever they found under the Temple Mount 200 years earlier that set this whole thing in motion, it all vanished without a trace. The legends split here, some saying the knights who escaped fled to Scotland, others that they sought refuge in Portugal, where they rebranded as the Order of Christ. But for all to settle in one place right after the arrests, with how news would have spread, just makes them too easy to find. It's just too large a footprint. I think it's more likely they did what the surviving Atlanteans did and spread out in smaller groups, taking their customs and rituals all over the world, searching for people they felt worthy of passing their knowledge to. Just look around. They pioneered our banking system. Their symbols are on money, corporate logos, and architecture all over the world. Their family bloodlines still hold power and influence to this day. If sacred knowledge survived the flood, couldn't it have survived the flame? And if so, who's guarding it now? But that's a question for another time. If you're still here, thank you so much for hanging out for a while. This kind of thing is fun to talk about, and right now I think we could all use a bit more fun and positivity. I'll be back by the fire next month with part 2 of our Secret Society series as we look into the survival and evolution of the Knights and the rise of the most powerful order in the history of man, the Illuminati. So if you see me around, stop by and sit in as we continue this adventure. Till then, always remember, do your own research and never sell yourself short. God bless.